What happens when the only restaurant that still offers you an affordable meal decides you are no longer worth the priorities anymore and turn its back to you? That's the new reality happening right now. Because between 2023 and 2025, over 63% of American fast food chains' new store openings were launched in Canada, while more than a dozen US states saw zero growth. Brands like Starbucks, Wendys, and McDonald's are shutting down in their homeland and crossing the border for lower taxes, steadier labor, cheaper utilities. Canada checks the boxes, and so, one by one, the restaurants that once fed millions of American families begin to disappear from the map. The price of chicken may rise, but the price of being forgotten is even heavier. And when your last affordable meal is taken away, what part of your life stays untouched? Look closely, because it might already be happening in your neighborhood. This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. And today we will reveal top 10 shocking big restaurant chains choosing Canada over the US. Let's begin from your table. Number 1, McDonald's. In just the first half of 2025, more than 170 McDonald's locations quietly shut down across the United States. While 7 new restaurants opened their doors in Canada, the Golden Arches are now glowing brighter north of the border, while it left behind many American cities that once helped build that empire. Today, the US citizens wake up to realize the sad new reality. McDonald's, long seen as a symbol of everyday American life, is placing its future investments in another country. I know the news sounds so strange and hard to believe. Back in its golden days, McDonald's was the beat of life. It was the happy meal for parents who wanted to treat their kid, the cheeseburger after school, the stop during a long drive. In 2014, the US proudly hosted more than 14,300 locations. But by mid-2025, that number has fallen below 12,000. Americans still need McDonald's, but painfully the business might no longer survive in this modern economy. They decided to push themselves first. According to the company's Q1 2025 financial report, more than $65 million in new investment has been allocated to Canadian expansion, surpassing all domestic growth funding for the first time in over 2 decades. Meanwhile, franchisees in the US are facing increased labor costs, a 30% rise in utility expenses in key states, and mounting supply chain disruptions. In contrast, provinces like Alberta offer electricity rebates, tax incentives, and more predictable labor conditions. All of this is making Canada the safer bet, news and numbers in the paper. But what happens when such a huge brand turns its back at the people who built it? Each closed McDonald's means 40 to 60 jobs are gone, many of them held by older workers supplementing their retirement, or young people saving for college. It also means the disappearance of the $5 meal that once helped families stretch their budgets through the month. And for many, a small moment of normalcy, of sitting at the same booth, eating the same sandwich, is disappearing. There is no announcement saying McDonald's is leaving America, but when the hiring banners go up in Toronto and the 4 lease signs appear in Tulsa, the message is loud and clear enough. McDonald's isn't just changing locations, it's changing priorities. And when a name this big begins to turn away from the very streets where it first became a part of American life, the question isn't just about business anymore. So what does it mean for us? When even the symbol of America starts to point north. Number 2, Starbucks. Did you notice that in early 2025, Starbucks has shut down more than 120 stores across major American cities like Portland, Philadelphia, San Francisco? More shocking, it even shut down in Seattle, the birthplace of the brand itself. But at the very same time, the company announced a plan to open 140 new stores in Canada before year's end, launching a nationwide campaign called Brewing North. Could it be another withdrawal from its motherland like McDonald's above? The loss might be hurt, because for millions of Americans, especially Gen X and Boomers, Starbucks was never just coffee. The quiet table in the corner means a reliable start to a long day, or the family meetup spot on weekends. The taste of the coffee was so familiar and brought back every sweet memory. But today, in neighborhoods that once depended on that familiarity, all that's left is a paper-covered window and a 4 lease sign taped to the glass. Starbucks' Q1 2025 financial report shows a staggering $75 million allocated for Canadian expansion, while investment in the US dropped to under $9 million, the lowest in over 12 years. As of May 2025, Canada hosts 1,662 stores, an 11.5% increase from 2023. Meanwhile, U.S. locations fell by 8.1%. According to Bloomberg Intelligence, running a Starbucks in Vancouver is currently 21% cheaper than in Los Angeles. Why is this happening? The reasons run deeper than coffee beans. Canada now offers 3-year tax exemptions for F&B chains expanding into post-pandemic zones, particularly in British Columbia. In contrast, commercial rent in major U.S. cities has jumped over 18% since 2022 due to inflation and real estate shortages. Reports also show that petty theft and workplace incidents in Starbucks stores across cities like Seattle and San Francisco have driven up insurance costs. In March 2025, the National Coffee Association confirmed that Starbucks closed 16 U.S. stores solely over staff safety concerns. In Canada, by comparison, local governments help cover barista training and maintain service standards without hiking prices. But for many working Americans, Starbucks was the last remaining spot that felt both affordable and welcomed. Now, a similar cup of coffee that once cost under $4 is sold for over $7.50 in many U.S. cities, in lower income areas. Elderly residents now rely on gas stations or vending machines for a warm drink. So what we are losing is just not a basic coffee. We might lose a space. A pause in the chaotic world. And if even Starbucks, the so-called second living room of the American middle class, decides to bet its future elsewhere, then what does that say about the people left behind? And if the places that once welcomed us now lock their doors and turn north? What kind of daily life are we being asked to accept? A cup of coffee can vanish this quietly and quickly. Could you imagine what happens when it's your to-go meal next number 3? Wendys. What does it say about a country when even the cheapest meal quietly packs up, refuses to serve its people, and moves house? That's what is happening with Wendys, in 2025 towns across Ohio. The very birthplace of Wendys are now marked by darkened windows and faded closed permanently signs. Meanwhile, north of the border, Wendys Canada is booming. Over 50 new locations are being launched this year alone, under a bold slogan, bringing real meals north for working-class families. Wendys was more than just lunch. It was the $4 combo after shifts, the first job flipping patties, the Sunday stop after church, the square burger, the chili frosty, and the warm booth was part of the American family rhythm. But today, that rhythm is nowhere to be found. According to Restaurant Brands International's investment report, a staggering 63% of new development funds were funneled into Canadian expansion, while the U.S. received just 13% since 2023. More than 70 Wendys stores in America have quietly vanished, many from blue-collar states like Missouri, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In contrast, Wendys Canada has surged by nearly 18% in store count, outpacing even homegrown giants like A&W. But why, as mentioned above, Canada is now offering 3-year commercial property tax subsidies for foreign food chains. That translates into a $400,000 saving per store, something U.S. locations can't compete with. Labor costs have also ballooned in the U.S., with average wages up 27% since 2022. In Canada, the increase has been just 9.4%, and Wendys US has been embroiled in lawsuits over labor violations, with investigations into break time abuse in Georgia, Texas, and Arkansas. A Canadian regional executive told Food Service News, "Canada lets us grow with quality, profit, and staff stability. The US has just become too chaotic." But that's a different story for struggling Americans. For them, Wendys was one of the last real meals under $6, with actual protein they needed instead of fake meats. Now, in towns across Arkansas and Iowa, residents have to drive up to 40 miles just to find an open location. What's about the alternative microwave dinners from gas stations or overpriced meals at Five Guys and Shake Shack? Clearly not a good deal. The Frosty is fading, the $4 deal is gone. And so is the quiet sense that someone still remembers people like us. When a company built on serving real food for real people walks away from the very people who made it thrive, who's left to serve those Americans now? Number 4, Burger King. How did we go from being the home of the Whopper to being erased from the Burger King map? In 2025, Burger King opened 42 new stores in Canada, while simultaneously shutting down nearly 120 locations across the United States. Among those closures were dozens in Florida, Texas, and Illinois, once celebrated as the true Whopper kingdoms of America. The uncomfortable question lingered: why would a brand born in Miami now pour millions into Toronto instead for generations? The Whopper wasn't just food, it was memory. It meant a long-haul driver's only hot lunch, a reward after a night shift, a treat for the kids on Sunday drives. In 2010, Burger King had over 7,200 stores operating in the US, making up almost 80% of its global footprint. By 2025, that number had fallen to just over 5,300, according to Statista, in towns across Indiana, Missouri, and South Dakota. Families now drive over 50 miles without finding a single Burger King still open. According to Restaurant Brands International's Q1 2025 report, capital spending in Canada increased by 42% year over year, while US development spending dropped 28%. Operating costs per store in Canada are now 22% lower due to cheaper power, better commercial tax policies, and fewer hiring shortages. Global data. Canada reports Burger King as the fastest growing fast food brand there in early 2025, outpacing Popeyes and even domestic favorite Pizza. The shift wasn't just strategic, it was systemic. After a damaging internal finance scandal in 2023, Burger King US downsized to stop the bleeding, targeting closures in lower-income areas. TechOps report shows the average cost of maintaining US kitchen equipment is now 31% higher than in Canada, blamed on broken logistics and missing replacement parts. Worse, staffing issues across American outlets, especially in management roles, crippled store efficiency and erased profit margins. Meanwhile, Burger King Canada benefits from being tied into Tim Hortons and Popeyes' local supply networks, slashing ingredient costs by up to 18%. In other words, Canada offered stability, the US offered strain, and for everyday Americans, that means being priced out or completely left behind. Once accessible Whopper combos under $7 are now either unavailable or cost up to $11 in surviving city locations. Workers without smartphones, elderly residents unfamiliar with apps, and those on fixed incomes, many are no longer part of Burger King's modern consumer vision. Culver's, Sonic, and In-N-Out still stand firm, promising not to retreat from America. That makes Burger King's exit feel even more bitter. When profit decides who gets served and who gets shut out, what happens to the people who were there all along? And if you're still holding out hope for brands tied to the working class, then look at A&W, a brand once familiar at every truck stop, now revving up and heading toward Canada. Number 5. A&W restaurants. How does a brand born in California end up finding its true home across the border? Founded in 1919, A&W is one of America's oldest fast food chains. But in 2025, Canada officially surpassed the US in total store count. While America now hosts fewer than 500 active A&W locations, the city of Saskatoon in Canada alone just celebrated the opening of its 1,100th store. That city was never a fast food capital, yet it now holds more A&Ws than entire US states. For older Americans, A&W was never just root beer. It was the sound of roller skates at your car window, the place where small-town families would stop after Sunday church, a landmark for truckers on rural highways. But today, across Iowa, Arizona, and Ohio, the once familiar A&W sign has vanished from dozens of towns. According to A&W Food Services of Canada Limited, the brand's 2024 Canadian revenue rose by 14.8%, breaking every profitability benchmark in company history. Between 2023 and 2025, over 150 new Canadian locations opened. During the same period, more than 60 U.S. locations closed due to inability to meet basic profitability, according to Restaurant Dive. In the U.S., A&W mostly survives in underfunded rural franchises. Meanwhile, in Canada, the company has built a cohesive, modernized system with full support in logistics, hiring, and branding. Why this divide in Canada? A&W receives tax breaks for using hormone-free meats, eco-friendly packaging, and sustainable sourcing, cutting ingredient costs by 21%. In the US, A&W franchises reported a nearly 30% cost hike in labor, beef, and paper between 2022 and 2024. Without support from Yum Brands, its former parent American outlets are left to fend for themselves, lacking a central marketing or operations strategy. For many rural regions, A&W was the final accessible fast food option. After the loss of Dairy Queen, Hardee's, and Arby's, in places like West Virginia and Wyoming. Locals now drive over 60 miles just to find a root beer and burger combo under $10. Retirees, truckers, and night shift workers have lost their one familiar roadside stop, once a small comfort that reminded them they still belonged in the American landscape. So when a brand born in the US is better loved and supported abroad, maybe the question isn't why did they leave, but rather, who's still fighting to keep the soul of America alive? And if you thought only burger joints were disappearing, just look at Domino's, the brand that once promised delivery in under 30 minutes, but now seems to be vanishing from America's delivery map. Number 7. Dominos Pizza. What happens when even the fastest food becomes unreachable on a typical Friday night in Des Moines, Iowa? Families once tapped their Domino's app without a second thought, but by 2025, all 8 local Domino's locations have shut down, while 15 new stores opened in Alberta, Manitoba, and Toronto, for many in the US. The app now simply displays a quiet heartbreak delivery unavailable in your location. Domino's wasn't just a pizza, it was dinner after a double shift, a reward for kids who aced their spelling test, a celebration made simple and affordable. Back in the early 2010s, their 30-minute delivery guarantee became iconic, but by 2025, that promise has vanished across most of Middle America. According to the company's 2024 financial report, Domino's closed nearly 170 U.S. locations within just 18 months, mostly in food desert regions such as border towns in Texas, the Midwest, and Appalachia. Meanwhile, Canada saw a 23% store increase, surpassing 600 stores by Q1 2025 according to Technomic. Domino's CEO for international markets stated Canada offers a more optimized logistics model, with supply chain costs 17% lower than many U.S. states. Why the shift? Cheese prices in the U.S. Domino's key ingredients spiked over 32% since 2022, while Canada's controlled dairy import pricing saves nearly 9.3% per pizza. Additionally, Canada waived food inspection fees for 2 years, unlike New York, Illinois, and California, where those fees rose by up to 14% by late 2023. In the U.S., rising gas costs and labor shortages forced massive cuts to delivery staff, pushing average delivery times to 47 minutes compared to 26 minutes in Canada. In smaller towns and secondary cities, Domino's was often the only app-based, under $10 pizza delivery available. Without it, residents are left with inconsistent local joints or frozen supermarket pies. For those without cars or elderly folks unfamiliar with apps, Domino's had been the last simple bridge to a full, warm meal. Working-class families who already lost Walmart neighborhood markets and Subway are now watching Domino's vanish too. Keep watching to see what's happening to Popeyes, the once unbeatable home of crispy fried chicken that used to light up every family dinner. Number 8. Popeyes. The signature taste of New Orleans-style fried chicken now crosses the border more often than it crosses American dinner tables. By 2025, Popeyes fans in Maine found all 4 local locations shuttered. Yet in Ottawa, once a city with 0 Popeyes outlets, 5 new stores opened in just 6 months. Today, to enjoy the same spicy, crunchy combo, Americans often have to look north for working-class Americans. Popeyes wasn't just fast food. It was Sunday's family combo, shared between 4 people for under $20. It was a southern flavor that made you feel at home, whether you were in Baton Rouge or Detroit. It was the only hot meal left open past 10 p.m. after a long shift, a box of joy. Fried and golden. According to Restaurant Brands International's Q1 2025 report, Popeyes Canada saw a revenue jump of 28%, outpacing both KFC and Swiss Chalet in the fried chicken market. Meanwhile, Popeyes US shut down 94 stores in just 14 months, especially in working-class states like Mississippi, Alabama, and West Virginia. RBI has pledged to invest $65 million into Canada while slashing nearly 40% of its domestic expansion budget. In a 2024 shareholder meeting, the CEO admitted Canada offers 22% higher profit margins and a far more stable supply chain. Why cooking oil prices in the U.S. have surged over 36% since 2022, while Canada subsidizes vegetable oils for restaurants. Popeyes in America also faced mass resignations over wage transparency issues, especially in Texas and Louisiana. The Cajun blend spice mix, essential to the brand, suffered distribution breakdowns in the U.S. while Canada secured a European exclusive import agreement. At the end of 2024, Popeyes was also accused of downgrading meat quality at several American outlets to save costs, a move that deeply damaged public trust and pushed corporate focus further north. For many black workers, immigrant families, and older Southern residents, Popeyes was that perfect meal, hot, filling, and affordable. Now, with stores disappearing from poorer neighborhoods and border towns, there's no longer a place to grab a $10 chicken meal. Chick-fil-A remains open but costs 30% more. KFC has changed formats and flavors. The joy of biting into a Popeyes drumstick has become a distant luxury right where it was born. Popeyes began in New Orleans, yet today, its future belongs to Toronto. If even the food born of your culture and region is abandoned for foreign profits, how are Americans supposed to hold on to memory, identity, and pride? And if you think fried chicken has flown too far, just look at Pizza Hut, the place once filled with birthday laughter, now replaced by for-lease signs in strip malls across America. Number 9, Pizza Hut. The familiar red-roofed signs once glowing over every American strip mall are now being pulled down in Missouri, Georgia, and Utah quietly, painfully, at the same time. Pizza Hut Canada is expanding. 70 new dine-in restaurants are set to open by late 2025, especially in Ontario, Alberta, and Quebec regions, now absorbing investments quietly withdrawn from the United States. For many families, Pizza Hut wasn't just about pizza. It was birthdays, Father's Day, and graduation spent in cozy booths with warm yellow lighting and oversized soda pitchers. It was the all-you-can-eat lunch buffet, the cheap heaven of the American middle class. But by 2025, more than 300 Pizza Hut locations in the US had shut down or been converted to takeout only. Meanwhile, Canada doubled its dine-in presence, according to Restaurant Dive. Yum Brand's 2024 report showed that Pizza Hut Canada's revenue jumped 21%, thanks to provincial policies that actively support F&B expansion. In contrast, the US arm reported an 11% drop in online orders, a 17% surge in rent costs, and a record 29% employee attrition rate, forcing over 100 US stores to forfeit licenses by Q1 2025. Canada's downtown revitalization program slashed commercial taxes by 60% for new restaurants, a benefit the US no longer offers. Ingredient costs are also driving the exodus. In the US, wheat, oil, and cheese prices have soared. But Canada, sourcing wheat from Saskatchewan and cheese through a national deal with Saputo, cuts costs by 15 to 20%. Add to that the 2023 scandal where Pizza Hut US was accused of shrinking pizza sizes without notice, further souring public trust. As dine-in restaurants closed, Pizza Hut US pivoted to delivery, only to lose ground to faster rivals like Domino's and Papa John's. Meanwhile, Canada preserved both dine-in and delivery, reinforcing its appeal as a full-service family brand for retirees, students, or working families without full kitchens. Pizza Hut was once the affordable answer to a real meal. Now, many must settle for frozen supermarket options. The simple tradition of sitting down at a Pizza Hut every weekend is quietly disappearing from America's cultural fabric. Canada saw the gap and acted, transforming Pizza Hut into a symbol of community revival, while Americans watched theirs become just another empty space. A single pizza doesn't change a nation, but when it disappears, and the booths disappear with it, something more than dinner is lost. What remains of connection? When even pizza leaves number 9, Subway. Once called the healthy choice on every street corner, Subway is now quietly vanishing from American towns. From 2023 to early 2025, over 1,000 Subway locations have closed across the United States. But in Canada, the opposite is true. Store count has grown by 12%, with over 200 new openings planned by the end of this year. What once filled every downtown block is now just paper-covered windows and empty storefronts for millions of working-class Americans. Subway was the closest thing to a healthy lunch they could afford. It wasn't a burger. It wasn't fried. It wasn't overpriced salad. It was the only quick meal that felt remotely like fresh vegetables. Truck drivers grabbed a footlong on the road. Students shared 6-inch subs after school. Seniors picked half a sandwich to stretch into dinner. It wasn't luxury, but it was enough. At its peak, Subway had more US stores than even McDonald's, over 23,000 in 2016. But by mid-2025, that number has fallen to around 17,000. according to Statista. Subway Canada, on the other hand, reported 0 closures in 2024 and profit per store rose by over 14%. Franchisees in Canada enjoy reduced taxes for 2 years and receive local marketing support from city government's perks. Now rare in the US, ingredient costs in the States have soared. Since 2022, prices for cold cuts, fresh vegetables, and bread have jumped nearly 30%. Meanwhile, American Subway has faced repeated lawsuits over questionable meat quality, driving away loyal customers. The brand's US operations were further weakened when Roark Capital Group acquired Subway and shifted focus to global investment. Central support was cut. Franchises struggled alone. Canada, meanwhile, benefits from stable logistics, synchronized supply chains, and fresh produce sourced locally. In small towns and rural America, Subway was often the only healthy option under $10. Now, residents are pushed toward greasy fast food, canned pasta, or nothing at all for the diabetic, the student, the driver in a hurry. Losing Subway isn't just about food, it's about losing health, losing time, and losing control. And when they see new Subway stores opening in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal while theirs shutter quietly, they begin to feel not just forgotten, but erased. Subway once said, "Eat fresh," but maybe only Canadians still can, if even the simplest. Unfried. Modest meal has abandoned American soil. What values are left behind? Number 10. Tim Hortons. In 2025, a retiree from Buffalo, New York admitted he now drives over 20 minutes into Canada just to get his usual Tim Hortons coffee because his local store has shut down. That story reflects a wider shift while dozens of US Tim Hortons stores in Michigan, Ohio, and New York closed without notice. Canada welcomed 5 new stores in Ontario alone in just 3 months, offering free double-double coffee and Timbits to packed crowds. Tim Hortons was once seen as the working-class alternative to Starbucks, a warm corner with plastic red booths, $1 donuts, and strong coffee that fueled drivers, retirees, and night shift workers across the Northeast. But in 2024, over 90% of Tim Hortons' expansion budget was spent in Canada. Only 7% went to the US, where at least 47 stores were shuttered. The brand's parent company now reports 22% higher profit margins in Canada, thanks to lower operating taxes and energy costs, and a smaller labor shortage for many Americans. Tim Hortons wasn't just a cafe, it was the last affordable anchor in their daily life. Now, even that comfort is gone. When the brands we grew up with start choosing somewhere else, maybe it's not just business that's leaving, but something deeper, a sense of belonging, of being served, of being seen, one by one. Familiar names fade from our streets not because we changed, but because we were no longer prioritized. If this video made you pause, even for a moment, maybe it's worth asking what else is quietly slipping away before we notice.